Now this is getting personal. Take a walk on the wild side. Lou Reed was transphobic. MRCTV blog, Canadian Student Association apologizes for playing transphobic Take a Walk on the Wild Side. I'll have a link in the description to both sites so you can read it for yourself, because I am going to get right to the point. Social justice warrior professional crybabies are excavating the past of popular music and culture to add to their enormous and never-ending list of things to be offended over. The context of this issue. This song was played on AM radio in the early 1970s that created rare exposure to the general public of people that they would never have previously. Bear in mind that AM radio regularly censored words or lyrics in songs that were not acceptable. Fast forward the tape to over 40 years later, and the cult of SJW wants to censor entire songs. This indeed is a disturbing trend. One of the things we see in the anti-SJW community is references to the autistic screech. Let's be fair and see it from the side of the autism advocates. Apparently, they are pretty pissed over the recent popularity of fidget spinners. What the hell is a fidget spinner, you ask? It is a type of stress-relieving toy. The toy has been advertised as helping people who have trouble with focusing or fidgeting, such as those with ADHD, autism, or anxiety, by acting as a release mechanism for nervous energy or stress. Apparently, Wikipedia is misguided as usual, because the thinking person's guide to autism is furious because of what they reveal about societal power structures and the pathologizing of disabled people by non-disabled persons. Autistic people have been fighting a war for decades. It's a war against being forcibly, often brutally, conditioned to behave more like neurotypicals. There is a war on autism that digs into the trenches to reveal a rigid hierarchy of who gets to decide which behaviors are normal or pathological. These thinkers' main concern in this article is something that was considered entirely pathological and in dire need of correction when done by disabled people is now perfectly acceptable because it's being done by non-disabled people. They seem angry about the popularity of this toy because us normies use them rather than focus on the possible therapeutic qualities of this gadget. Once again, the cult of SJW stands in the way of progress. It's actually amusing that they make reference to eye contact here. Will somebody write a tweet that makes it socially acceptable to avoid eye contact? Because we all know that if you avoid eye contact with someone, then you're racist. This was talked about on The Blaze. If you avoid eye contact while talking with another person, or if you ask them where they're from, then you're racist. According to Oxford University's Equality and Diversity Unit, recently informed students and staff that not speaking directly to people is a form of subtle racism and racial microaggression that can lead to mental ill health, according to the Telegraph. In the age of safe spaces, dozens of genders, microaggressions, and students violently shutting down the speeches of those whom they disagree with. These new forms of racism don't come as a surprise. Still, many believe the university's newest guidance is ridiculous. Essentially, people are being accused of a thought crime. Dr. Joanna Williams, a professor at the University of Kent, told the Telegraph. They are being accused of thinking incorrect thoughts based on an assumption of where they may or may not be looking, she explains. It is really problematic. It means people can't relate to each other naturally. They have rules in the back of their mind, and they can't be spontaneous as their interactions are all overlaid with the desire to follow all these rules. This is all part of a chilling desire on the part of university authorities to police not just opinions but everyday conversations between students, Slater told The Independent. It's not only deeply authoritarian, it has a chilling effect on how students interact with one another. Now, if you're concerned that news coming out of Britain that the cult of SJW has established a firm beachhead on the island, then you'll feel some relief over the latest news coming out of the prestigious University of Birmingham. Healthy fat people don't exist, scientific study concludes. Thank you again goes out to the Age of Shitlords for covering this important work. With the rise of the cult of social justice, we find that body acceptance, quite possibly well-intentioned by some, is a danger to the health of many. In the news that surprises no one, a new study from the University of Birmingham has found conclusively that it is practically impossible to be obese and metabolically healthy. The study found that even though some obese individuals may appear healthy, These people still have a 50% higher risk of coronary heart disease than people who are of normal weight. They also have a 7% increased risk of cerebrovascular disease, problems affecting the blood supply to the brain, which can cause a stroke and double the risk of heart failure. I point out this study just to give people hope that the war against sanity in the cult of SJW is being countered by sanity itself. Now, if you're a fan of sci-fi or even the Star Trek long list of TV serials, then you will likely be aware of the controversy surrounding the latest effort, Star Trek Discovery, which is a sequel to the series from the 1960s. Undoubtedly, there are fans who are pissed about the supposed lack of white dudes on the bridge, but it seems there is curious debate over series continuity and canon, as William Shatner notes on Reddit. I just love how frazzled some of you get about canon. It's a show, and they are doing a prequel to something that was made 50 years ago. Star Trek was always more about the stories and messaging than the look. If they screw that up, roast them alive and kick them in the you-know-what. If they don't, then enjoy it. Kirk out. Not having followed the Star Trek TV franchise, I can't weigh in on the subject, but if you are a Trekkie, please comment below your thoughts on this obviously universe-shattering news from the bowels of commercial television. As insane as this seems, let's see what some students at Virginia Tech are up to. Student protesters block unacceptable staircase because it's not handicap accessible. Yes, you read that right. Students at Virginia Tech University staged a sit-out by blocking a newly built staircase because they say it isn't acceptable to disabled people. The controversial new 20-step staircase was built as a replacement for an old staircase the university closed down due to the construction of a new dorm on campus. The problem with the stairs, however, is that they don't have a ramp for disabled people, meaning disabled students have to use a route which takes about 3 minutes longer, which is mind-numbing. By blocking access to the stairs, they are achieving what they are protesting against, preventing access. Rather than channeling frustration into action to have more ramps built for disabled people, the activists blocked everyone from using the staircase and directed them to another route to ensure people start thinking about access. Western Washington University is scheduled to host a workshop today that aims to reduce the impact of white privilege on social and academic relations, according to campus officials. Oh no, here we go again. I think the harmful effects of white privilege are that it can reflect an insensitivity to the subtle effects of both racism and lack of awareness of the differences between how people of color and people called white are treated in everyday life. Jimerson told the College Fix via email, not being aware that other people face daily, often subtle discrimination can make white people insensitive to these debilitating effects. Pharmaceutical giants need to start R&D on a cure for the dreaded contagion of white privilege. Ordinary people whose life consists of getting by and taking care of their family need not apply for dosage. Upper middle class white SJW students at university, on the other hand, will be lining up for blocks for the cure. Randall Jimerson says that although I think the United States has made progress in some aspects of race relations, such as overt or legal segregation, recent evidence suggests we have a long way to go. There is always room for improvement, I do agree, but it's not going to come from the stream of unending accusation that these SJW cult members hurl at others. But there is hope. Carrie Smith writes, on leaving the SJW cult and finding myself. Carrie has been undergoing a pretty significant change in the way she interprets the world and how to be in it. She writes about this growing cult of SJW and the regressive left. When you believe you are morally superior, when you have dehumanized those you disagree with, you can justify almost anything. In a particularly vocal part of the left, justification for dehumanizing and committing violence against those on the right has already begun. And she continues, I don't yet know what to call this part of the left. Majid Nawaz calls them the regressive left. Others call them SJWs or the alt-left. The ideology is postmodernist cultural Marxism, and it operates as a secular religion. Most are indoctrinated in liberal elite colleges, though many are being indoctrinated online these days. It has its own dogma and jargon, meant to make you feel like a good person, and used to lecture others on their sin. Check your privilege. Much like mansplaining and gaslighting, all at one time useful terms have over time lost a lot of their meaning. These days I see them most frequently being abused as weaponized ad hominem attacks on a person's immutable identity markers, a way to avoid making an argument while simultaneously claiming an unearned moral high ground in a discussion. Many of you watching this video are all too familiar with what Kerry is talking about. She goes on to explain what seems all too obvious to those who are not indoctrinated and can think for themselves. I have been wondering why more people on the left are not speaking up against violence, in favor of free exchange of ideas and dialogue, in favor of compassion. But I know why. I was in the cult. Part of it is that you are a true believer, and part of it is that you are fearful of being called an apostate and being trashed as a sexist, racist, homophobic, transphobic, Islamophobic, xenophobic, fascist, white supremacist, Nazi. A friend recently wrote to me privately to say they find my latest post refreshing and that they believe in free speech, but as someone who works in entertainment, they can't say anything that might cause them to lose their job. As someone who has gone through this and is still going through a change in my understanding of systems of belief, I can say this: when you finally get past fear, it is so liberating. Since shedding the prison of my former ideology, I have a renewed passion for reading, a newfound interest in philosophy, psychology, history, and spirituality. Instead of trying to fix others, these days I try to focus on improving myself. Well, let's offer a big hand of freedom to help pull others, not as thoughtful and considerate about life as Kerry is, out of the eternal hell that is the cult of SJW. Yes, my friends, it is no laughing matter to watch loved ones suffer from the constant need to brand everyone as racist, misogynist, rape culture supporters, trans and Islamophobes. This is your brain, and this is your brain on social justice. Any questions?